Good evening. Let's do some meditation on compassion, yes? So we will do for about half an hour or maybe a little longer. You okay with that? And then we can have some discussion. And I'm assuming that you are here with some familiarity. Anyone who just completely new to meditation? No, that's good. Are you? No? No. How about you over there? Are you new to meditation or you have been doing it? Good. That's good. So, compassion meditation may involve little more than just emptying the mind, just resting the mind, just settling the mind. You know, the compassion meditation, it has to do with connecting with others, right? You know, that for that we have to not just simply let the thoughts calm, settle, but also, you know, certain insights, certain feelings, you know, and perspectives about others, about ourselves, about others. You know, we have to kind of cultivate or attune to those, and perhaps then sit with such feelings about how we relate to others. The compassion has to do with that, because the compassion is, you know, in its nature, of course, it's supported, it's led, it can be led by a certain deliberate cultivation of certain perspectives, deliberately attuning, you know, bringing our awareness, our mind to attune to certain situations, certain facts, certain reality of others, you know. But in its actual nature, compassion is more of an emotion, you know, emotional. It's a felt experience, you know, that where one relates to others, you know, with a sense of connectedness, with a sense of endearment, and thus unable to see others, you know, going through difficulties, suffering, and thus feels the need to alleviate others' suffering, or need to see others alleviated of their suffering, right? So that's the compassion. Ultimately has to do with we have to attune to the vulnerability, the difficulty, the suffering of others, if it is about compassion towards others. You know, if it's the compassion for us, has to do with attuning to our own vulnerabilities, our own suffering, with the sense that there are certain of those difficulties, if you will, you know, that certain situations that are part of our reality of being unenlightened, of ordinary beings. Getting old is part of that. Getting sick now and then is part of that, you know, that it's about embracing that vulnerability, the suffering, you know, that be able to kind of, you know, instead of sort of denying it, instead of running away from them, be able to embrace it. but with the sense that there are certain things we can do about how to change. So, there are unavoidable facts of life, getting old, sick from time to time, and then, separating from loved ones and so forth. The gains are lost now and then, that the situations, ups and downs happen in life, that the certain part there are certain things that are unavoidable to be able to embrace them. But then, how those ups and downs affect us, how troubling they become, how much kind of distressing, they become, those are very much dependent on how we see those situations. That so much has to do with how we relate to this, our own getting old, our own getting ill, our own getting, having or not having certain image, certain fame, certain reputation, certain status, certain financial status, or economic, social, and what, all kinds. So much of that, how these situations are going to trouble us, depends on how we see them, how we relate to them, right? So a tremendous, freedom that it offers us, that it kind of the seeing that to what extent that we can shape our mind, so that can make a difference as to how troubling ups and downs and so forth, that those situations that we confront in our life become, right? That recognition of that is a tremendous, it's tremendously freeing. To get a sense that we have the ability to shape our mind, shape how we see a loss, how we see a gain, and how we see our aging, how we see our illness, right? When those things are going to happen, but how we see it is in our hands. Recognizing that kind of that conviction that so much can be done, that is in our hands, within our power. Not overnight necessarily, but it's a tool that nobody else is going to change for us. That we have to change, and we can. That is the important part, I think, of course, for the compassion. So once we can have about ours, that kind of recognition about our predicament, our situation, our vulnerability, our difficulties, with the sense of a certain degree of what happens to, acceptance and embracing, but then with the conviction that those, how we deal with them is within our power, within, with that conviction, that then we can be in a much better situation to relate to others. Also, they do have the same vulnerabilities, same deep aspirations to be happy and to be free of suffering and so forth, and confront various. We are all in the same boat to recognize that basic humanity, our common humanity, common aspiration to embrace, and then further our interconnectedness, interdependence, that we are not simply connected with sharing the same aspiration to be well, to flourish, and to be free of suffering, but we are each one intimately connected in this web of interconnectedness. We're intimately connected, that the making a difference to each other, that's contributing to each other's well-being in ways that not intentionally, not necessarily everything, but what we do, has relevance to others. So therefore, what others do have relevance. So from that perspective, this recognition that each day there are so many things that we enjoy, we appreciate. It's all made possible by others. Of course we make our efforts, but it takes a whole village, whole global village, to have what we have. That recognition, I think it's very important to bring to our deep awareness that how we appreciate, how we benefit the kindness of others' efforts, how the others do contribute to our well-being, our own accomplishments. Does that make sense? So the success of compassion meditation has to do with how well we can attune to these facts, these realities, how well we can make that our mindset, how well this becomes our enduring mindset, enduring lens of our mind to, really as to see these situations and people around. So let's do. So of course that, as in order for us to see these situations, the things more clearly, more vividly, more intimately, that of course, if the very lens of our mind is foggy, it would be hard to have that vivid awareness of, such situations. So therefore let's begin first by settling our mind to bring a certain kind of clarity and stability to our mind through the mindfulness of breathing, and then resting the mind in its natural uncontrived state. So let's begin with adjusting the meditation posture by bringing our back in upright position, fully upright position. And once placed in that position, just let the back rest in that position. Hands in the meditation posture, just palms gently resting on your knees, or if it feels more comfortable, to fold them, so you may fold them with the left hand on the bottom, right on the top, and thumb slightly touching, placing the folded hand in your lap. Bringing the shoulders also in a level position, just slightly raised and pulled back initially. And once placed in that position, let the shoulders just rest in that position. Head slightly inclined, so the chin slightly tucked inside. Eyes cast downwards. If not too distracting, just leaving slightly open, just vacantly cast downwards. But if they become too distracting, you may close them. And lips and teeth in natural position, gently touching. Maintaining this physical posture, the posture that facilitates the clarity and the stability of the mind. The two features of mind we need in cultivating any inner skills. Let's draw our attention to here and now, to our own body. Just as we tune to our bodily state, the feeling. In the shoulders, neck, back, waist, chest, and so forth. If you feel a certain tensions there, stiffness, tightness, and so forth. And if it helps to gently move those parts of the body to release such stiffness or tensions, please do so. Or otherwise, as you take a deep breath, and then breathe out, just with that outgoing breath. Just let those tensions or the tightness, stiffness, just evaporate with the outgoing breath as you breathe out. To further relax our body and mind, let's take 3 rounds of deep and deliberate, slow breathing. Just take a deep breath through the nostrils. As you breathe in, feel that unfolding sensation in the nostrils if you can. Bringing the breath down to the chest as the lungs expand or the chest rises. Just feel expanding feeling of the chest or the expanding of the lungs. And bringing the breath all the way down to the belly. Just feel that expanding of the diaphragms or the rising of the belly, the feeling, the sensation associated with such. And then as we breathe out, just with the outgoing breath, as we gently exhale, just let go of all our distressing thoughts, feelings and emotions. With the outgoing breath, gently let them go. Just repeat this for 2 more times. Mind and body relaxed in this way to a certain extent. Let's now for about 5 minutes, let's here dedicate in cultivating the mindfulness of breathing, or in other words, enhancing our attentional and kind of stability and clarity by maintaining our attention in the present with our breath. Directing our attention at the openings of the nostrils in that small area, or directing our attention at the abdomen and resting at one of those 2 places. And as we breathe in and out, just simply rest your awareness, your attention with each incoming and outgoing breath, aware of that little sensation that unfolds in the nostrils as you breathe in and out, or just the gentle rise and falling of the belly. If you place the attention at the abdomen, by simply placing in the present moment at one of those 2 places and resting with each in-breath and outgoing breath, let's enhance the stability and clarity of our attention, our mind, by keeping it with the breath, 1 breath at a time. As we maintain our attention in the present with the breath, and to sustain it in the present, thus to enhance our stability and clarity of the mind. Let's maintain a certain degree of inner kind of alertness, if you will, as if from the corner of a certain corner of our mind to monitor the activity of our mind, while placing our attention with the breath, with that introspective alertness. Whenever our attention becomes distracted to thoughts, feelings, memories, sounds and so forth, As we notice such, suspending immediate reaction to those thoughts and so forth, but just simply noticing them as thoughts, feelings, memories, sounds, and let them be there without fighting, without struggling, but just simply bring the attention back to the breath. Once reconnected with the breath, then let's sustain our attention in the present, just one breath at a time, aware of each incoming and outgoing breath. By simply placing our attention in the present with the breath and sustaining it there, as our mind becomes somewhat stable, somewhat calm. Now let go of attending to the breath, but just simply holding that space, that in that state of calm or stillness. Let's just place our attention in the present, with the present moment awareness. Letting go of any attempt to block certain thoughts, feelings and memories, nor inviting other thoughts and feelings, emotions, sensations, but just simply resting our awareness here and now, simply to witness our inner dimension, our inner experience, in whatever form it unfolds as thoughts, feelings, hopes, worries, memories, emotions. As we simply rest our attention here and now, attuned to this inner experience, when those thoughts, feelings, hope, memories, as they arise, simply noticing, observing as they come, gradually change and subside into the stillness of our own mind. As it happens, just rest your awareness in that stillness, in that space, between one thought, emotion or the next. But as another thought, feeling, hope, worry, as it arises, once again, suspending any attempt to struggle, to pursue or reject, but just simply placing our attention here and now to witness, observe as it comes and goes. In that expanding space between one thought and next, just simply rest your attention, your awareness, just here in the present moment. As we rest our awareness in this uncontrived state of just here and now, simply attuned to our own inner unfolding experiences, inner experience. Let the mind be like the vast ocean with its deep stillness. And like the various waves unfold on the surface of the ocean, and as they gradually subside into the stillness of the ocean, just simply relating to the unfolding thoughts, feelings, memories, hopes and so forth, just ripples the waves of our own mind without becoming involved by pursuing or suppressing, but just simply to bring our awareness to those unfolding thoughts as they unfold, and just observing as they subside into that stillness, just resting our awareness in that stillness as a thought, a feeling, emotion subsides. By placing our attention, if you will, the lens of our attention directed to our own inner experience. Let's here take a few moments, just a few minutes, 2-3 minutes, if you will, to just attune to our own hopes, dreams, aspirations as they unfold, recognizing that underlying various concerns, hopes and expectations, worries and so forth, how fundamental are our deep aspirations to be happy, to be well, to flourish, and to be free of suffering or anguish, distress. Just deeply in touch with our own such deep, these core aspirations. Aspirations to be well, to flourish, and to be free or to avoid suffering and distress and so forth. Let's take a moment to reflect that how, despite the wish to be free of anguish and suffering and dissatisfactions, distress and like that, that facing or encountering the various situations, ups and downs in our life, that there are how certain situations that we experience, that we experience such anguish and unhappiness, distress in certain situations like that, the very happiness that we pursue, that we, how we notice that how such the genuine kind of lasting, enduring sense of well-being, the happiness, is something that is rare to experience. Take a few moments to it as best as you can to reflect and to attune, to bring your own mind to this awareness, to attune to the fact that the various things in life, whether they are possessions, gains, reputation, status, those who are in our lives and so forth, that where we feel such distress when such loss and or perceived loss, expecting loss and so forth of reputation, status, or the wealth and the close ones and so forth, or anticipating certain situations, that criticism and so forth and so on. How in such situations that how we feel distress. So at the best you can to attune to the fact that many of these situations are part of our own ordinary life. To attuning to the fact that how we deal with them, how we perceive them, if we are obsessed blindly with just having certain things or the status and so forth and so on, how such situation also fuels the fear and the anger and so forth and so on when we don't find such. Or so in a way, to recognizing that the best we can, to kind of attune to the fact that our own mind, our own attitude or the perspectives, how we see this situation has a lot to do with how we feel about these situations. Thus, cultivating this conviction that the shaping our own attitude and the perspective about ups and downs, the things that we encounter in our life, whether the people or the situations, these attitudes, the perspectives are something that we can shape, we can reshape, we can cultivate it. And that's something that is, we have the ability to do so. If anything, to make a change, much more than changing external conditions. This most powerful way of changing how we feel, it has to do with changing our inner perspectives, and that's something that we can, if we try, we can, that's only we have the ability to change our own attitude and perspectives. And this is something we can definitely do. So see if we can embrace that conviction. With the resolve, bringing a resolve, therefore, to emerge from sort of the unhealthy, defective to unhealthy attitude and perspectives, to transform them. Let's take a few moments now to recognize that so much of our such unhealthy attitudes, the attitudes that kind of lead to distress and conflict and unhappiness, so much have to do with in relation to other people, whether in our own neighborhood, in our own families, in our own workplace and so forth. Sometimes just having this bias feelings, that a blind kind of attachment for one and the extreme dislike or hatred for others. Both this extreme attitude, how they kind of affect us. So therefore, here, seeing the kind of drawbacks of such extreme negative, unhealthy attitudes, or even kind of indifference towards others, is how it's problematic. Let's see if we can here develop some ways to kind of relate to others, to kind of overcome such extreme uneven feelings towards others by recognizing our common humanity. That is, attuning to our common, the aspiration that we share, how like us, everyone in this room, or those who we work with, those people, whether we have some feelings of dislike or liking, or indifferent feelings. Perhaps if it helps, just bring 3 people, most vividly as you can in your mind. From on your own circle of, those people that you associate with. Someone who is somewhat neutral, someone who is difficult to deal with, and someone who you feel very close to, very attached. Just bringing them in mind, notice how you feel about them, their goals, their success or failure, their fortune or misfortunes. If we feel some feeling of flatness, indifference towards the stranger, or the person neutral, his or her fortune or misfortunes, a certain degree of joy for the close one's fortune, and the opposite for someone who is annoying. Recognizing that when these feelings become extreme, that's where it disturbs our own equilibrium, our own peace, and lead to the actions and so forth that destroy our harmony, further complications. So therefore, let's work to transform these extreme feelings by attuning to the reality that, like us, each one of these 3 and everyone in this room, each one of us has the same kind of precious, that consider our own well-being so precious. We seek our well-being and happiness, flourishing, and to avoid suffering. Just take a moment to embrace, attune to that fact. Embrace others from this recognition. And even though deliberately to kind of bring us to that awakening, that awareness, to recognizing that how, on the basis of such aspirations that we share, they too have the right to be happy and to be free from suffering, to pursue for their happiness and to pursue for their freedom from various degrees of suffering or distress. Just take a moment to really see that if there are any basis, when it's all said and done, if there's really any basis that I have more right to pursue happiness than the person next to that me here in this room, or anyone in this room. On the basis of those deep aspirations that I have, certainly I have the right to pursue for my happiness. So therefore, each one here in this room, on the basis of his or her own that fundamental aspirations for well-being and happiness and to avoid suffering, they too have the right to pursue for their happiness and freedom from suffering. See if we can embrace that and sit with that recognition, that conviction, that awareness. Embracing those three people and everyone in this room with this reality that we all share the same aspiration to be happy, to be free, and right to pursue our happiness and freedom. Just connecting, kind of identifying with others with these common aspirations that we share, embracing others with this. Let's further take a few moments to also recognize that not only we share this common aspiration and the right to pursue our well-being, but in some direct or indirect ways, in this infinite web of interconnectedness, my interests depend on everyone in this room. Just to kind of bring this conviction, think about how each and everything that we enjoy in our life, even as simple as just a bite of food, a sandwich that we eat for lunch, or just a piece of clothing that we wear. And like that, they are just in every day, we have just every moment there are such things that we enjoy, appreciate, that to find comfort. Just take one of those, as ordinary as it may be, just those comfort, those things that we enjoy, appreciate, to bring this realization, to be awareness that how such simple enjoyment itself is how it's made possible by so many others. The food, the sandwich, the people who made them, the grocery stores that carried the supplies and so forth, farmers who created, people who transported, and so forth and so on. To realize that how everyone in this great city of Atlanta and everyone in this room, in some ways, what they do as their profession, whatever, that in some ways they make a difference. They kind of they're related to some form of comfort and enjoyment, joy that I experience, I enjoy in our life. To see if we can bring that conviction to just our heart and mind here. And then if embracing that conviction, if you could sit with that for a moment. As we relate to others, as with this awareness about others, from this perspective that how we are benefited by others, how we benefit from their kindness, intended or unintended. That it's a certain feeling of that closeness, endearing, a tenderness that unfolds. And just see if you can just sit with that feeling of tenderness, that closeness, appreciation, the gratitude and a feeling of closeness, or that this affection, the endearing feeling, even if it is kind of to some extent brought through effort deliberately by attuning to this reality of our interconnectedness and the kindness of others. Sit with that sense of endearing feeling. And now with the awareness that, like us, everyone here, that they too want to be happy, to be free of suffering. But despite these wishes, that of course there are the various forms of distress and suffering that people experience, are lacking the genuine happiness, the lasting happiness, and so forth. So with that, as we attune to those situation of those we connect with certain degree of endearing feeling, that tenderness. Let this empathy, the feeling kind of for their, that there's a certain degree of kind of to relating to their feelings, perhaps even in a certain kind of feeling, that feeling they are in their kind of distress and so forth, then with the sense, therefore, to see them relieved of their suffering. And to see them endowed with the very joy and happiness, the flourishing that they seek. To kind of cultivate this even with a certain deliberate effort here, that you might even verbalize just gently that how wonderful it would be if everyone here is able to fulfill his or her aspiration to be happy, to flourish, to have fulfillment and so forth. How wonderful if everyone is able to find relief from their fears and worries and distress and anguish and suffering. Let's further deepen this by wishing that how may they find greater joy and fulfillment in their lives. May they find greater relief from their suffering and their dissatisfactions. And may we, in some ways, if we are not able now, but may we be able to help them in some ways, contribute towards well-being and relief from their suffering. May our own work, what we do, our efforts and so forth, in some ways contribute towards their greater well-being and freedom from their suffering. Let's take a moment to dedicate any goodness that has unfolded through this practice. In a way, it's kind of dedicating our practice, our meditation, and anything positive that unfolded from this meditation. Let's dedicate this to peace, healing, and happiness for all beings on this earth. And let's conclude our meditation here by setting a brief intention here at the end to extend these perspectives, these insights that we cultivated here, even though with certain deliberate efforts and however kind of conceptually or briefly, just the glimpses of such insights that we were able to cultivate. Let's set this intention to extend this into our everyday life, to be able to be mindful that as we interact with others of our common aspirations, common humanity, that others are like us with the same goals and dreams, and most importantly, the deep wish to be happy and to be free of suffering, and thus having the right to pursue for their happiness and well-being and freedom. As we interact with others at our workplace, in our neighborhood, in our families, in our communities, also to be able to be mindful that how in many ways, as even though we are not aware, how their efforts, how these people contribute to our own well-being and accomplishments in myriad ways. To not lose perspective about this, to be mindful about these benefits we receive from them, and thus relate to them from these perspectives. Thank you. I thought that we would do about half an hour, but it's almost 7. Do you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything to share? Yes?
Thank you very much. Wonderful kind of meditation.
Thank you.
One of the thoughts that came through my mind, most of us who have a certain amount of critical, judgmental view, is when you talk about seeking peace, happiness, free from suffering, there are clearly some people who we view as so sadistic or so narcissistic, thugs, to the name, say, of Vladimir Putin, let's say, or certain other people that we may have encountered personally in our own lives. How do you handle those judgments and critical thoughts and relate them to the overall?
I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, that, first of all, when we are practicing, for compassion, for forgiveness, and like that, I mean, compassion has to be rooted in forgiveness, also towards those who are, behaving negatively towards others, who are causing harm to others, us or others. To relate to them with compassion, we have to be able to forgive them for their misdeeds. And that's not easy, that towards people who are very destructive, that will cause a lot of harm to others. So, first thing we need to be mindful is that it's okay if we can't feel compassion towards those, that kind of leave them aside. as we practice, try towards those who are not that nasty, that difficult, that start with those. But keeping in mind, though, that this is something that eventually it would be great to be able to forgive them, to be able to have compassion for them as well. Not, with in the sense that to condone their actions, but to know that they are blind. They are acting in that way, because they don't have control over their own lives, emotions, so forth. So therefore, that eventually, to keeping in mind that eventually to be a work, kind of keeping this hope that eventually that I would want to be able to embrace them also with compassion, because with the compassion, that it's not that if we hold with someone compassion, that will make us less able to then prevent them from doing bad things if it is in our power. That a mother will probably be much more concerned of bad actions of her child than someone else. Right?
Yes, and I
Yes.
also think
Yeah.
how the Dalai Lama expresses his
Yeah.
view toward the Chinese.
Yes. So let me stay with this for a second. A mother would be much more concerned than somebody else about her child's misbehavior. Why? Because she hates child, or she cares for, she cares for. It's the compassion for her child, that she would not want to see the child doing things that are destructive, bad for her, bad for others. So same thing. Compassion, in a true sense, should not lead to kind of, our closing the eyes on someone's misdeeds, but rather to constructively, meaningfully preventing, helping them avoid such misdeeds. So that's something that is easy to say than done. So we need to be kind of humble in that, have that humility. Now, if we can't go there, that it's okay to keep it further. But
If you don't mind, could you just address a moment more the feeling of judgment we have if we care about the world, we care about our communities, it's being very destructive. How do we lose that desire to judge that person? So when we open the paper, we see that the Russian thugs are doing damage. How do are we? Yes, we know that they're wrong, and we're not closing our eyes. How do you lose the judgment? Because you can't say they're just seeking their own happiness and their own lack of suffering. There's something else within them that's causing them to be so brutal, sadistic.
yes. So first of all, we have to separate the actions from the actor. That with the actions we should judge. That what is causing harm, that is bad, that needs to be. If we have the power to prevent, to lobbying, to writing, to whatever means, that whatever, or if nothing else, to wish, send our thoughts, that the bad actions and the destructive actions that cause harm to them or to others, it's unnecessary. That. So therefore, we should judge. But at the same time, to know that the destructive actions, whoever is doing, of course not that, like that they not doing it, I want to be happy, so I want to kill someone or I want to cause harm. But negative actions reflect that they are captured by certain emotions, whether it's narcissism, whether it's on greed, whether it is intense anger, dislike, or it is the obsession for power that blinds them from others. So that part is what I think that we have to kind of recognize. So in that way, that you can then see. I mean, because you brought His Holiness, that His Holiness, how he is able to have compassion for the very, the people. I mean, very kind of the people in power who cause so much harm, so much destruction. I remember an interview that he was giving to the CNN or some program in 2008. And 2008 was very intense, emotionally intense period for Tibetans because of the Olympics that were taking place in China, and that many people, also saw that an opportunity to kind of raise awareness of what human rights abuses that's happening, rightly so, in Tibet and China. But then it kind of created the whole another layer of complexity. There's and then there was some rights in Tibet, that the ordinary people, that the frustration it's kind of spilled over, and then that there was some the destruction and so forth. But then that kind of made the communist regime made that as a way to kind of one-sided propaganda and to fuel the certain hatred about Tibetans and like that. But all these things, what was happening, I mean, that if you think of kind of the intense moment of emotion that can be, for His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself, that then the Chinese kind of made this all about the Dalai Lama, that he is the one instigating these riots and the violence, and he is the terrorist, he is the wolf in the monk's robe, and that with the men with the devil's heart, and all those kinds of like that's what they did. That so you can imagine that what would be going on in His Holiness's mind, right? In his heart. But he was in his interview was saying that like, I mean, this is so unfortunate, but he on it kind of the cognitive level, he sees that this is so disturbing. But he said that on the emotional level, he was not disturbed. He slept the same 8 hours, when he had to go to bed. He had the same, kind of the presence to talk with the people, and all the things he was doing, the appetite and everything. So what he attributed that to, he said that I mean, of course, it's a lifetime of practice, but in that intense moment, he said that the truth practices that he said that one, he reminded himself, it's the mindfulness, kind of the being mindful, that a verse where it says that never naked tupal jumbo tupala member to a menditor tube numo darsike numo tandenga sames, that the verse is when a patient is inflicted by certain disease, illness, and acts violently, when a patient is acting violently due to certain illness, a physician is not, would not be hateful towards the patient, but instead be caring, be concerned. Buddhas, similarly, Buddhas view afflictive emotions, the destructive emotions, as the enemies, not the person afflicted with afflictive emotions. That. So the comparison, you see that he reminded. So he said that what he kind of did was that. So, like the Buddhas see the afflictive emotions as enemies, not the people with afflictive emotions. He said that Tenzin Gyatso, his name, Dalai Lama, that Tenzin Gyatso must see afflictive emotions as enemy, not the people with afflictive emotions. And of course, that lifetime of practice, they would have had a much different impact than someone, just kind of starting, of course, but that's, and another practice that he said was that what he did, it's a part of, it's a kind of, it goes to the heart of the compassion and love meditation, practice of this. He said that what he did, that each, day also, that specifically, that with that kind of compassion, that connecting to, then therefore really seeing that those people were inflicted with such their, the afflictive emotions, their, what was the anger or the hatred or the, and so forth. So what he did was that he, in the practice of Tonglen, that kind of lifting them of those venomous, the diseases of hatred and anger and the, and then in turn sending his kind of understanding, wisdom, love, compassion, well-being, openness to them, those leaders, like that. And he said that these kind of practices, are what, enable him to not be disturbed at the emotional level. That, that's, I think that it's incredible. When I was hearing that, that, in my mind, that I'm thinking that, this is, very kind of contrary to what happens ordinarily, to us ordinarily. We can say that I can understand, cognitively, that intellectually, but emotionally we will be, kind of agitated and also. Yes, I was saying that he could, understand, that agitation and like that's happening, that at the cognitive level, this is really disturbing and like that, but without feeling disturbed and like that. And that's a, if we are in some degrees, not perhaps with such heinous kind of actions, that people, but it's like the daily petty, conflicts and kind of the annoyances, that if we could even have, that the ability to kind of transform those, petty, kind of irritations and like that in that way, that would be a huge blessing, right? To turn our lives in a much healthier way. Thank you. Have a good day.